call for permanent representation on that council.
Madam President, the UN Founding Charter is outdated when it comes to representation in this August Assembly. The most powerful post-World War II nations are still being rewarded with an almost totalitarian guardianship over the rest of the world. And yet, the first sentence in Chapter 2, Article 1 of the UN Charter declares that the organization is based on the principle of sovereign equality of all its members. If this were true, and was the case, a continent as large as Africa, with its numerous UN member states, would have at least one permanent seat on the Security Council. Furthermore, we believe that veto power should not be restricted to only 5 nations, nor should it be absolute. There must be a mechanism in this House for the General Assembly to challenge a veto. No single nation should be able to exercise an absolute veto to serve its own interests in a dispute. So today, Madam President, I stand here in this exact spot and ask the world, if not now, then when? We demand not only a reform of the Security Council, but also a reset of the global financial architecture, which is currently rigged against Africa. Africa must have a greater say in the world's multilateral financial institutions.
That's the president, and he had a lot more to say in terms of all that's been playing out on the continent and the world at large. We take a listen to him, but I also know that Dr. Vladimir Chidanso is joining us this evening here on Hot Edition. Doc, let me just introduce you and thank you as well for joining us this evening here on the Bulletin.
Thanks for having me.
Doug, I would just want us to hear from the president on speak to the situation in Gaza, and then I'll come to you for us to begin the conversation on what many are describing as a bold speech.
The denial of visas to President Abbas and the Palestinian delegation sets a bad precedent and should be deeply worrying to all member nations of the United Nations. Ghana recognized the state of Palestine in 1988 and supported a 2-state solution to the conflict since then. And I say, contrary to the claims of some, a 2-state solution would not be a reward for Hamas. It will rather be a reprieve for the hundreds of thousands of innocent women and children and people who are facing collective punishment and forced starvation for no reason other than the fact that they are Palestinian. For nearly 2 years and for the fear of reprisals, we here in this General Assembly have been playing hide and seek with language to find the right words to help us avoid or excuse what we all know is taking place in Gaza. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter what you call it. If it looks like a duck, it swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, well, then it must be a duck. The crimes in Gaza must stop. The crimes in Gaza must stop.
And that's the president. Prof, Doc, I should say, I appreciate you again for joining us. Let's start off with your immediate reactions to the speech as delivered by the president.
Well, as you might notice from the applause, it's a bold speech. In fact, Sarkozy himself was very much worried as to what he said and said Trump was angered by what he said. And he had to walk 30 minutes across the street. It's unfortunate that what is happening in the world today is because of the inaction of member states who are big powers. And the president made it clear what is happening in Gaza. A spade must be called a spade, and he made it clear. And I think I doff my hat for him for making it clear that what America did to Abbas was not acceptable. What the Charter says, the Charter infringement is so glaring. So he made it clear. Our problem only lies with the fact that no matter how bold you are in talking about the United Nations, it becomes mere lamentations. Yes, Ghana recognized Palestine as far back as 1998. So we were far ahead of those countries which are now recognizing Palestine. And recognition means nothing. Today, even it doesn't. Why? Because we must carve the place for the Palestinians. We must have a territory. We must go ahead and get a territory for them, spell out the boundaries, and make sure that Israel is moved away from that territory. We haven't done that. And so it becomes mere lamentations. The question about the charter and the veto, this is not the first time Kofi Annan brazenly created a situation where he redefined security in such a way that Africa also participated. I remember most of us were part of the making of Ghana's position, which was adopted at Isowini. The Isowini consensus is the African position. And there we were talking about the veto. It became lamentation. It was thrown away. Why? Because there's a catch-22 over here. And President Mahama must lead Africa to clear away the catch-22. Whatever you do to the charter, whatever you want changed in the charter, will have to go back to the P5 for all of them to say yes. So the veto power is so powerful. So maybe we need a completely new charter. We all approve it before we throw away the old charter. So I believe that he has done so well. He's mentioned a whole lot of things, but they become orientation. We must take proper steps towards them. I didn't hear much about reparation. He mentioned it in passing. But Africa must now, in Luanda next week or so, we are going to have this reparation conference. And Ghana has been spearheading it. We had a conference in 2023 and 2025. So it looks as though Ghana is now taking what we call offensive diplomacy. And that is very, very important. I think he needs to be assisted by all Africa or the global south to be able to change the structure of global discourse.
I see you mention a number of the other thematic areas with which I was going to speak to, but I just want us to stay on the UN Charter because you mentioned that it must move away from mere lamentations. I've had the chance to as well. I've listened to Kenya's President, Dr. William Ruto, and he also stressed greatly on a reform of the Charter and then the Security Council, amongst many other things. It's increasingly, we're seeing a lot more of the African presidents begin to make that statement. Will it just be the coming together of these different presidents on the continent and making this statement to see it come through, or we should be seeing a lot more action in terms of emotion being moved or on the floor of the General Assembly, amongst many other things?
We should cut more friendlier countries of the South to be able to have a new global charter completely so that we get away from this. As I'm saying, amending the charter and giving Africa a representation on a veto representation doesn't change anything. So we are only just adding to the woes. It goes back to everything that we say about Israel, and you get one African country to say no, or one European country to say no. Meanwhile, all those who are fighting for seats, remember Japan, the US, Germany, and Japan, Germany, Brazil are all trying to find a way to become veto powers. And that's not what is needed. So we must move. There must be a real movement for saving the world. You know, in times of crisis, the world meets to create a multilateral organization. In 1648, we did that. Then came World War I, we did that to establish the League of Nations. World War II, we did that to establish the current UN system. But after the Cold War was a defining metaphor for conducting international relations. After the Cold War ended, we haven't met to really change the structure of the world, the structure of governing the world. And that is the problem. We are still under the 1945 kind of charter, which tried to ameliorate the situation in 1945. So one president said it's outdated, but it doesn't need just an amendment because the catch-22 will catch us. Because we'll just have to change that, make amendments, give more, expand the Security Council, whatever it is, but then the 5 members will have to say yes in unison, which will never happen.
Right, Doc, let me also bring in another doctor on the other telephone line, Dr. Jonathan Asantiochu, who's also joining us this evening for the commentary and also analysis of what it is that we've been hearing from the president. He's a political analyst as well, and so perhaps we'll look at it from the political lenses as well. But I just want to pick it a notch higher with you as well, Dr. Vladimir, on the exploitation bit as well that we heard the president speak to, amongst many other things. He says that going forward, we should not have a case where the African continent is cutting away huge resources for exploitation by the West, and we get patterns as a result of that.
Well, he was very, very right. That is a financial kind of architecture we have in the world. But as I've always said, and I've published a few articles on this, as I've always said, if it remains just lamentation, it will just remain. How is Africa ganging up together to ensure that this exploitation stops? Look at what the Association of Sahelian countries are doing. Action, action, action. And it's playing. They are getting it right. If Africa would do this, collective Africa, 54 countries, would do this, are we all going to be enslaved or going to be, what will happen to us? But unfortunately, a lot of our leadership just want their bread buttered well and soaked well. And therefore, there's no collective serious African action. So he's very right. But it is because of the structure of the world, as I've always said. If we don't change this structure by action, they'll continue to exploit us.
Dr. Jonathan Asantiochu, I'll come to you now on what you've made of the president's speech and also what has been criticism of some sort from the minority, even before the speech, about the country's foreign relations and policy in perspective.
Well, let me say good evening to your listeners and to your good self and my senior out there. I think that when it comes to the United Nations and the presidents that deliver various speeches, I think that they've all given some form of flamboyant speeches over the period. What remains to be done is the action bit. And an African continent in which even within West Africa, going to another West African country becomes a problem. And we still talk, on big issues. In actual fact, the issues that our president, has delineated over there, of course, they are spot on. In a situation where we all don't have the same rights in terms of vetoing, then it means that it's a bit problematic. But the other aspect of the same point, which I look at it from a cynical perspective, is the fact that if you do not put in much, if you don't have much to give at that place, then I'm not too sure you'll be among those who call the shots. It is often said that he who calls the piper calls the tune or something of that sort. And so we cannot only give flamboyant speeches not backed by our resources. Do we have that? We don't. The architecture of our economy is such that we are in perpetuity in some kind of debt. And so you have your people to lead, and they are hungry. So you are more concerned about the hunger of the people than to think big and to go beyond your station. In their case, they've been able to develop their economy in their country in such a way that the rest is just time for luxury. And they will be able to engage in things of that nature when you are here thinking about bread and butter. So if you look at it from all these perspectives, then you will see that we are by far at a disadvantage. That being said, this Israel-Hamas thing is a very sensitive thing altogether. you need to approach that with some kind of tact and finesse. One way or the other, when Hamas did think about what I said was that they have beaten more than they can chew, and that Israel was going to retaliate more than in equal measure. And that is exactly what my prophecy has been. They have gone beyond their reach. Now, you see that when you go into the Israel-Hamas politics, you have to appreciate the fact that if a particular nation, every now and then, there is a refrain that they don't deserve to exist, they don't deserve to exist, then it means that they want to protect themselves. And that is exactly what they have done. If you look at it from a different perspective, in terms of where they find themselves on the map, the global map, Israel is playing in the Champions League. It should tell you that they have the protection, right, of the powers that be. And that in itself makes them occupy a very unique position in the architecture of global politics. I think that what the president said, the world leaders must sit down and ponder about some of these things. He really made some poignant points that I believe that in the global politics, it will take a long period for them to digest all the issues that he raised. I think that he really, really spoke well. They are spot on, but some of them indeed will rattle some tail or feathers.
Right, let's begin to round up on the conversation, and I'll start off with you and then end with Professor Dr. Vladimir Nchidan. So on what needs to happen going forward now that we've made a lot of these bold speeches. Doc has begun to suggest that it needs to move beyond the talks, but in terms of structural ways where we can begin to benefit as a continent from these flowery speeches, what are your thoughts going forward as to what we can look forward to?
Should I be the one speaking?
Yes, you should, please.
Okay. So the point is that we need to put our money where our mouth is. I don't think they will turn around our economy for us. They won't do it because it is not in their interest to have us developed or become a developed nation. It will have to take a conscious effort by African leaders and leaders, for that matter, to be able to do so. It will not be handed to us on silver platter. We have seen so many conspiracy theories that have been churned out by some academics from the West that we are supposed to be the producers of raw materials and they're supposed to be the producers of finished product. And so unless it is a conscious effort and not just mere rhetorics by leaders of Africa who come and go, we will still remain as we are. Look at the way we are destroying our environment, all in the name of what? All these things in the end, when there is a disaster, a disease outbreak, what happens to us? We will still go out there asking and begging for something. But if we are not able to look inward and ensure that the right things are done, we don't eschew politics. The politics of nepotism will have to give way for meritocracy. If we make these conscious efforts, I think that by and large we'll be able to grow, but not, just an overnight kind of thing. It should be something. The petty politics is just too much. And if we do not see the larger picture, that it is not everybody who will have to be president, and that if one becomes, everybody must support to ensure that we grow, then I think that we'll just be going to the UN on a regular basis and be making beautiful flowery speeches that do not end anywhere.
Dr. Santiocho, I appreciate you. Let me end with Dr. Vladimir Nchidan as well on this. And I mean, you've started speaking to a number of them, but in terms of persons who might not be familiar with how or what steps can be taken for some of these demands to begin to take concrete shapes for the continent to benefit, what are some of the things we can look out for?
Look, we have, if lip service to most of the things that we should do. The AU has been very lethargic where African issues are concerned, and we don't take bold collective actions. Like always, we wait for the big powers to tell us what to do. France has dictated the pace for a long time. The Squall, once upon a time, at the United Nations, representing the AU, boldly spelled out, just like President Mahama has now boldly told everybody what he thinks about what is happening in the world. The following day, the AU withdrew the woman as our representative, just because France took exception to what she said. And she was talking for the whole of Africa, how France was exploiting the French-speaking countries. So it is about time we, as Africans, collectively acted as Africans. And in this, we must do what normally is done in international relations, seek the support of like-minded countries, seek the support of, say, Brazil, China, India, Russia. And you see, what China is doing is said that China is showing itself big because it has the support now of Brazil, India, Russia, and they are even thinking about creating another World Bank, kind of. And everybody is shaking. And these are steps we need to be taking for ourselves. Why don't we have our own African ICC, International Criminal Court? And that if you watch out the 39 cases that had gone to the ICC, only one is non-African. I mean, come on. The AES has now shown us clearly that they are not happy and they are getting out of the ICC. Bold actions. Collectively, we will not die. I mean, my brother talked about Israel and President Bush said, if Israel did not exist, they would have invented it. So it's a country that was invented in order to be a Middle East country serving the interests of the West. If Hamas did what they did in October 2023, they didn't do that out of the blues. I mean, for how many years? 1948, 750,000 Palestinians were just thrown out of their land for Israel to be created. And we didn't create a corresponding country. And they have been subjugated for all these years. So they did that, and the future of it is that it will continue. Why will not the world, especially the Arab world, show anger? And we are pandering to the whims of the U.S. What did Iraq do before we attacked Iraq as a collective in 2003? What is, Israel doing? It's clear. An army well armed to the teeth fighting innocent persons without guns. Children, old age people, women being slaughtered. So we cannot sit now. Africa should take a collective action. Just like President Mahama was lamenting, there must be an action. In 1978, we took an action. The whole of Africa boycotted Israel. And it went down very well. So I believe in action. I believe in something that should show that we are angry. But these lamentations will go nowhere. We've lamented. Next year we'll go and lament again.
Doc, thank you very much for speaking to us. That's Dr. Vladimir Chidanso speaking to us as well this evening here on Hot Edition, here on 3FM 92.7. And we'll get into a bit more details away from this particular subject matter